Hello, everyone, and welcome to this evening's edition of Literary Nights with Unsolicited Press. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone to like, follow, comment, and when we're done, to please definitely share. Also, if you have a comment that you want to make from wherever you're watching, either YouTube or Instagram, you can put it in the comment section of wherever you're watching, and we will see that in real time, and we will be able to, if it's a question, answer, or if it's a comment, we'll let everyone see. Tonight we have a poet with us. Her name is Christy Prawl, and her book is coming out next month in September. It is called Catalog of Labors. It's a poetry book. Welcome, Christy. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank everyone else for joining us as well. I am so excited to hear your poetry. So
Thank you so
please
much.
tell us about your book, and we're going to be listening to some of your poetry.
Sure. So first of all, Rosalia, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to meet you, and it's an honor to be publishing my next book with Unsolicited Press. The book really started, I've always been very interested in labor practices, fair labor practices, fair trade practices. I come from a family of very hardworking people. My grandfather on my mother's side was a farmer, and on my father's side, my grandfather was a tool and die maker, and his wife worked at a high school cafeteria. So just very, very hardworking people. And so I just started writing these poetic vignettes that were tributes to unsung workers in American culture. And I realized after kind of dabbling with a few of those that I really had enough for a book. So I started to assemble it, order things, augment it with other pieces, think about work in a different way. Some of these are first-person accounts. Some of them are third-person accounts. None of them are me, but I think probably I exist in all of these portraits in some small way. So I shopped it around a bit, and Summer was kind enough to accept it for Unsolicited. And I'm excited to say that Catalog of Labors is coming out on Labor Day, so just a couple weeks away. Easy to remember.
Yeah, what a perfect time. Everyone, this is the cover. It's called Catalog of Labors, and I'm so excited to hear you read.
Thank you. Should I just go ahead and dig in? Is that how this works the best? All right. So I'm going to read a handful. This is a slim little volume, so I'm not going to give all of it away, but I do have maybe 3 or 4 poems to read just to kind of give you an idea of what the pieces are like. And I'm going to start with a piece called The Vacuum Cleaner Dealer. My husband and I were in the market for a new vacuum, and we went to a shop, and this poem is very much based on the person we encountered, the owner of the store. So it's called The Vacuum Cleaner Dealer. The most common source of death to an appliance is not the failure to empty the drum, but routinely clean the filter. This is the guidance he offers for free. Don't be seduced by a bagless, sutured hunk of plastic waiting to betray you. A good machine should last 2 decades or more. His shelves are lined with vintage Electrolux canisters, tincture blues and greens from space. He strokes a 1947 model surrendered by a customer on her way to the nursing home. They don't make them like this beauty anymore, he says. This man with a shop who can replace a cord in 5 minutes if you don't mind waiting, who put 3 children through college on what he made in sales, but will likely be late on rent again, who has lost thousands to internet shopping, yet unequivocally believes in repair, demonstrates the power of the largest motor ever to be placed in a vacuum in this model he rebuilt from parts. It's as if they do a waltz together. He dances, she hums. So that's my trusty friend, the vacuum cleaner dealer. This next piece is called The Engineer, and it's roughly based on a few different people I know. Boredom ricochets off the hard edge of a freight train, carrying ethanol. carrying the wanton thoughts of a man gone too long without intimacy. A secure living is a railroad job, so you don't upset the schedule for a woman encountered in a bar, knowing it comes to nothing but embarrassment and a poor night's sleep, and the shame of breakfast sandwiches served in plastic. Freeze the graffiti in time and it may tell a story. The whistle sounds within a quarter-mile radius of a public grade school crossing. 2 long wails, 1 short, 1 long. This is the law that keeps from killing children. And now I'm going to shift to the massage therapist. I'm pretty transparent. I've suffered from anxiety much of my life, and so I have had my fair share of massages. I had once in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, where I was doing a writing retreat. And there was just something about that experience. I was in kind of a curious headspace, and the woman who worked on me she was so generous and just really went above and beyond to I felt very seen. And I really felt that she was addressing my needs that were beyond just sort of the pain I might be carrying in my body. So this really is a tribute to her. The massage therapist. I will touch your back for $90. The room will smell of lavender. Music hanging soft to disappear. You're mostly just blank parts to me. A map to follow from the back of the head to the arches of the feet. A kind of stenography from the knots of your shoulders to the jagged stack of vertebrae pushing up through the skin of your back. On to the electric fences of your thighs. Sometimes I may care what happened to you. Maybe, like me, you were broken by love, wrecked by money, rubbed out by volumes of unseen work. Maybe you lost a child who survives in the cords of your neck, rewinding with every grocery bag. For you, I'll work 10 minutes extra. For you, when it's done, I'll demonstrate how to straighten your back, pull back your shoulders in line with your hips, lift your arms toward the ceiling, and hold. Cast your arms slowly out and down to your sides. Envision yourself a moth. Hold. And I've got one last piece to read from Catalog of Labors. It's called The Plumber. My lover, the plumber, is a Catholic, a bird watcher. Last month's sighting of a piping plover was the defining episode of his 46th year. He unraveled at the death of his father. He moisturizes. His body is most at home on his knees. A world traveler, he will appreciate a fine bathroom, but not judge a poor one. A fine bathroom puts function over form, he believes. I am no match for his attachment to augers, his comfort with systems that choke along until they've gone to rust. After so many years together, we argue, we pick. I am tired, and he is more tired. Each morning he wears one of 7 gray twill shirts in his closet, with the patch over the breast pocket, and goes to each scheduled appointment with the certainty, this is who I am. This is my name. So that's a little taste, I guess, of what's coming on Labor Day. So I've got a few more things I wanted to share tonight. My current book that's out in the world is a tiny little, honestly, pocket-sized book. I've tested it. It fits in the back pocket of a pair of pants. It's called With Her Hair on Fire. I published this last September with Roadside Press, which is another wonderful small press, also run by a woman. So we have to celebrate that. I just want to read the poem that gave rise to the title of this book, again, With Her Hair on Fire. So this is a short piece. By the way, these are all prose poems, 26 prose poems. And this one is called Ekphrastica. And it's responding to the paintings of an artist named Dory Why Not. A girl with her hair on fire is every girl. Bring her flowers and watch her wick them to kindling. You are a fool to think nasturtium ever solved for overheating. Bring her antlers instead. Bring her your exposed clavicle. Bring her 3 doors to choose from. Hide a horse behind one, your darkest secret behind another, someone to hurt behind the last. Hope she chooses door number 3. You know her only medicine is to punch from the shoulder, and she would never do that to a horse. So that's again a piece that's out in my current book. I have a few more poems to read that are a little bit more. These are forthcoming. So one of these, like many of us, I'm a bit of a news junkie, and it's a little bit painful to watch the news in the last few years. I think especially painful to some of us. And so this was a poem that was attempting to grapple with that challenge. And it's called Another Court Decision on the Evening News. This is part of a new manuscript that I'm working on. It just recently appeared in Midway Journal. So it doesn't have a home yet in a book, but I was very grateful to Midway Journal for giving it a place to land. Another court decision on the evening news. The arm of the living room chair amputates itself again. Nothing stays whole for long around here. The right tool for the job may never be a staple gun or orphaned glove. A cracked dish can draw blood from a finger, preventing the injured from counting to 10. From the back of a kitchen drawer, the world continues to dissolve. Cities flip like coins, like blueberry pancakes. I miss the bump of a newspaper on my front steps. I miss paper. My hair needs a good wash and a better cut. One day I may shave it all off, turn the scraps into tiny dolls that secretly know how to read. And then just 2 more pieces, I think. One is very short. I'm thinking about the sort of waning summer. Here in Chicago, like many parts of the country, we've had a very tumultuous summer, a lot of very strange storms. But the weather's really leveled out and become quite beautiful in the last day or 2. So now, of course, I'm feeling nostalgic for the end of summer. I'm starting to feel that sense of dread. But this is, I think, a good summer poem. It's called Scrub. On a day we can't find anything sweet, my sister and I head out front and pick honeysuckle from the edge of the driveway, suck the nectar down our throats, one bloom, then another, like there is no end to our hunger for weeds, like we ourselves have become them, expanding with abandon, untidy and impossible to tame. Try to cut us down if you like. We will uncurl again as you gaze at your handiwork, damning us for dodging the mower. We will never be a gardenia, never a French pastry, never a pretty thing you want to keep. And then finally, I'm going to read a piece. I'm leaving tomorrow morning for a vacation to some of the Western U.S. national parks, going to Yellowstone. So this is a poem called Dear Wyoming. And this is coming out in a forthcoming collection called The Grocery Pageant, which will be published by Nix's Mate Press. We've got a working date of February 2027, but still, it's not out yet. And sometimes there are delays, but definitely 2027, hopefully in the first quarter. Dear Wyoming, no one is more confounded than I by my cascade into love with you. You, the inverse of my longing for skyscrapers and commuter trains, the alleyways of teeming life behind the roads, too many heads to count on the sidewalks. So why, Wyoming, with your grain-choked fields and the hush and cover of the lush black forest, teeming with turkey vultures and snakes, your devil's tower, sacred mirage, poached by the movies from the Kiowa people. Your campsites hosted by an overseer named Laura, chain smoker and transplanted Ohioan, finding herself here, situated in the why be anywhere else, the lowing cows that walk the roads to pasture in the morning, the grasshoppers, the forest rangers, ready to offer a jump to your city car, piled high with city comforts, beet chips, pesto in jars, without judgment. The hunters and their children in matching camouflage, angling at venison for dinner. 5-point sheds, a trophy for the wall. You've wrapped your long, dry arms around me, Wyoming. You've found the bareback rider in me, the lover of boulders, of hikes, of controlled burns, of slow, please slow down and breathe in the air of me. The feeling of the lungs expanding and knowing if you get lost along a clay trail, you will be found and swaddled and found. Thank you.
Such beautiful poetry. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the one that I'm really intrigued. Well, I'm intrigued by all of them, but let's talk about the labor, the poetry of the labor. Let's put up this cover again. Catalog of labors.
Yes.
What an ingenious topic. We all work. I mean, America is built on working people. So
sure.
This is a very American book.
Yes.
What inspired it, and to start with the vacuum cleaner sales guy is amazing. That is in our culture, like door to door.
Sure.
Vacuum cleaner salesperson, the Oric.
Yeah, so, definitely.
So what inspired? Like, what was it about this guy that became lyrical for you?
I think in the case of the vacuum cleaner dealer, he was such a poignant individual. I mean, you walked in, we needed a new vacuum cleaner. We try to buy from independent shops when we can. So we did a little Google search, found that there was in Benton Harbor, Michigan. We also have a little place in Michigan. So we were out there and found in Benton Harbor, there was a guy in a strip mall who ran his own independent vacuum cleaner shop. We thought, well, that seems like a good place to spend our money. And we went in and just, we expected to look at the different vacuum cleaners, price them according to our budget, walk out with a vacuum cleaner. And he was just this miraculous storyteller. He wanted us to know so much about him. And you could tell his passion was vacuum cleaners, his passion, his expertise, his sort of reason for being, his North Star was vacuum cleaners. And he was such he really, if you think about people who are like scholars of different subjects, he was a true scholar of vacuum cleaner dealers. He could tell you the history of vacuums, how to sort of take them apart, put them back together again. He knew so much, and he was so eager to share it with people who he considered to be enthusiasts, which I don't know that I was a vacuum cleaner enthusiast when I walked in the door, but there was something about his sort of mode of storytelling and his welcome and the way he really took us into his world that just, I was rapt. I mean, we were there for probably over an hour, and it started to seem like a very important decision, which of these vacuum cleaners we were going to take home. And so he was elated when we chose the one that we did, because he was like, oh, you won't get a better motor than that, And sadly, we have mostly area rugs rather than wall-to-wall carpeting. And so the motor is so strong and forceful that it pulls up the corners of our rugs. So we have to be very careful when we vacuum. Nevertheless.
So what vacuum was this that you chose?
Oh, it is so heavy. I couldn't even, it's in my closet, I could tell you, but I don't even remember I don't remember the brand. We just took it home. You could tell it was just like, it was meant to be ours. So at any rate, I was a fiction writer first. And so I've always been very interested in character. So he was just, and I don't say this in a demeaning way. I mean, he was such a rich character, deeply human, fully dimensional, but also like, I mean, he was unlike anyone I had met in my life. And so this just gave rise to this poem. And then, I don't know, I think once I wrote the first of those, they just kind of cascaded out of me. I'm so interested in people, and I'm specifically interested in working people. And I think about how work just occupies the best hours of our lives, but often doesn't give much back to us. You know, if we're lucky, it gives something back to us. But for the majority of people, it gives a salary. It's very transactional, but it may not be much more than that. And so that was another thing I was kind of grappling with and trying to give voice to. So, yeah.
So what are some of the other professions or jobs or labor, you know, because the vacuum cleaner, even though it's part of the zeitgeist of our culture, you know, like we don't tend to think about vacuum cleaner salespeople.
Sure.
So what are some of the other, you know, are other like voiceless labors in there, or, you know, people that you don't consider every day?
Yeah, I mean, I read the engineer, I read the massage therapist, I read the plumber. So those are a few. I've got a bank teller, I've got a baker, I've got a customer service representative.
That must have been a hard one.
The customer service representative?
I
did that work.
Make fun of them.
Yeah, well, I did that work for a while. I used to, when I was in college, that was the way I was making money to pay for my tuition and my textbooks. And so I had to go to a call center every other night and get on those phones and call people. And so that one was not as hard as you might think, because I lived that life. I knew what it was like.
Yeah.
Trust me, sometimes when you're getting a call from a telemarketer, all they want is for you to hang up the phone, because it's clear if they're not going to be able to sell you something, courtesy is not a gift, because all you want, you hate yourself, right? You hate yourself for doing this, and yet you have to do it. You need the income. And it's tough, right? So I've gotten to the point where I'll just say thank you very much and hang up the phone, because I know, trust me, it's not the people making those phone calls that are making the profit or that really have a vested interest in, unless they are getting commission, which sometimes they are, but it fills a person with a lot of ambivalence. So that's another thing I was hoping to sort of capture on the page.
Well, there's a big difference between a customer service rep and a telemarketer, don't you think?
Well, in my case, the customer service rep and the telemarketer were kind of the same in that poem. So yes, fair enough. But I don't know. Actually, I might dispute that. I don't know that there's much of a difference. Maybe there's a difference in purpose. In one case, they're receiving the phone call. In another case, they're making the phone call. But trust me, it's a headache no matter what. So, yeah.
So, you said that you had been a fiction writer. Do you still write fiction?
Not so much anymore. I wrote fiction during my graduate work, and I thought I was going to be a fiction writer, and I thought I was going to be a professor who taught writing. And then my life went on a different trajectory, and I stopped writing for about 20 years. And so when I came back to writing again, I felt like a new foal, right? I felt like I was on very unsteady legs, and I thought, I need a point of entry here. So I challenged myself to write a poem a day for 30 days because I wanted that sense of completion. And it was really helpful. And I realized, oh my gosh, I think all along what I really wanted to be was a poet. I think fiction writing, I love the economy of poetry. I love the stories that can be embedded in poems, but I really like having to do that within a strict set of parameters.
So who are the poets who've inspired you? You know, I mean, a lot of people know Mary Oliver, but are there any poets that have really sung to you and ones you've tried to imitate?
I don't know if imitate is the case as much as maybe emulate or listen and learn from. But I love Robert Hass. I love Sharon Olds. We all love Diane Seuss. There are a lot of contemporary poets too that I just think are just masters of the craft. So I think people like Jessica Cuello, I think she is just incredible. There's a young poet that I had the pleasure of reading with recently, whose name is Courtney Morrow, who's doing just amazing, amazing work. I mean, I could go on, and my shelves are replete. I love Ada Limon. I think she's such a gorgeous poet. I mean, just there's so many. And I would make special mention of a poet that you may not be familiar with. His name is Philip Schaeffer, but I picked up his book, Bad Summon, about 3 or 4 years ago, and I just fell in love with it, and I keep it by my bedside. And I came to discover through a mutual connection that he owns a restaurant in Missoula, Montana. And on my trip out west, I'm going to be going through Missoula. So I'm going to get to meet this poet who's had such an influence on me, who also runs a restaurant. So speaking of labor, and none of us are making a living as poets. So we all are doing something.
Fiction writers. We all have different jobs. Yeah.
That's right. So anyway, it's just a fun thing.
I hope you bring your book so he can sign it.
For sure. It's already packed. So, yeah.
So let's talk about your process of writing. Are you still writing a poem a day, or have you pulled back from that? Do you write every day? Do you keep a journal? Talk about your process of, you said you had a 20-year hiatus. What was it like coming back?
Well, like I said, I had to exact some discipline upon myself to come back to writing. And that's why a poem a day for 30 days was really my gateway back into writing creatively. I think I don't write every day. I'm not, my schedule doesn't allow for that. Honestly, my sensibility, my sense of inspiration doesn't allow for that. I am bone tired some days, and some of it is like physically tired. Some is existentially tired, but there's just some days that the idea of picking up pen and putting it to paper seems impossible to me. So I wait for an idea to strike me. If I've been waiting too long, I count on my trusty, I have a favorite poet who does a prompt every Sunday. His name is Ben Nispoziani, and he does, his Substack is called Neon Pajamas. So anyone who's interested in kind of really quirky poetry, check that out, because he does a free prompt every Sunday, and that sort of gets me back on the horse again if I've had a little period of atrophy. So my process is unpredictable. It's not linear. I moved around a lot when I was a kid, and I think my writing process probably has kind of gained its character from that experience of my life of just being over here, then in a different place. And
so do you keep a journal then, even if you're not writing every day? Do you keep a notebook where you're writing notes or anything to yourself?
I keep pieces of paper. I mean, it's really sad. I'll get an inspiration on the, riding the L to work or something, and I'll be like, what piece of paper do I have in my bag? And sometimes it's just like a receipt from the grocery store. So I'll write down a line, and then I'll come home and I'll type that into my laptop. So I try to bring a journal with me, a notepad with me, but I often forget, and I change bags, and not everything transfers. So I'm messy. My process is very messy, but it has served me. So,
and it works, obviously, because you have multiple poems published and several books published. So, so you must be writing more than you think, actually.
I'm writing, I didn't start writing poetry until the year I turned 50. So, and that was 10 years ago. So I feel like I've been kind of making up for lost time. So I do try, honestly, if I have any unscheduled time on a weekend where I can just take a breath, I really do. I sit down and again, try to get something down. But, we all know as writers, we're lucky if 10% of what we get down on paper ends up turning into something bigger than that. So,
that's true.
Yes.
That is true. So, how was the transition from fiction to poetry? Was there any angst or anxiety over, I thought I was going to be writing short stories and novels, and now I'm writing poems. And even though I love writing poems, do I want to go back to fictions and, fiction? Yeah. So talk a little bit about reinventing yourself, because it takes one mindset to be a fiction writer. And then here you are, it's harder, much harder in my mind to write poetry because of the economy.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's a little bit different, right? I mean, there's some poets who are like, I could never do narrative, and some short story writers who are like, I could never do poetry. I really like the sort of hybrid space in between. So remember, I had 20 years between being a fiction writer and a poet. And so that amount of distance, I didn't feel like I was having any sort of cognitive dissonance, like, oh, I'm a fiction writer. Now I'm trying to be a poet. It was clumsy at first because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I had no formal education as a poet. I was just sort of dabbling. And so I really did lean heavily on my interest in narrative, my experience with narrative. And I did have a few people say to me at first, these aren't poems. These are like micro short stories. And I thought, does it matter exactly what we call them? And so I'm still trying to crack that nut of what it means, like what gets to count itself as a poem versus a piece of prose. For me, it's about the shape of the thing on the page sometimes. And I can take a prose poem I write and I can lineate it and create enjambments. And then I guess someone would look at that and say, this is a poem. And then I can convert it back to the full paragraph and they'd say, okay, this is a piece of prose. So I try not to get too tripped up in that. I just try to write what feels authentic to me and worry about what people call it later. So
that's probably the best way and most authentic way to be your best writer self,
It's honestly the only way I can do it. It's just the only way. And so I'm never going to be one of those poets that, I think my poetry, not because this is part of the intentionality of it, but I don't mind that this is a byproduct. My poetry is fairly accessible, right? I read poets sometimes and I'm like, I have to read this poem 6 times to really understand what it's saying. And there's some beautiful work like that. I mean, stunning, enviable work. That's not really so much my work. My work is fairly transparent. It's fairly straightforward. And again, it is because it is quite dependent on narrative, because that's really where I hone my skills.
Yeah, no. And I sometimes think it's really great to write those ponderous poems where you have to really think about it, but working people might not have that time to read the poems again and again.
Right.
And lately we're all working double time to make half as much. So
I know.
So work is very important. It's part of our culture, actually.
That's right. Yeah. Most definitely. And if you think about all the unpaid labor on top of the paid labor that some of us are lucky enough to have, it's really, a lot of us are spread very thin. So I always say I write to form relationships. And so I want to feel like there's a reader at the other end of these pieces who sort of thinks, oh, okay, I think I get this. I think I feel like somebody's handed something to me. Somebody has reached out to me as a reader. So that's
in a way I could see it's kind of illuminating to view a massage therapist as a worker, but it is work.
For sure.
It's hands-on work and it's hard work, but it is work.
Very hard work.
But there's an invisibility about some jobs or some professions that people don't really see.
Yeah.
Or respect or consider work. But I mean, a massage therapist takes skill and schooling. Like you have to be licensed, and there's a lot of jobs where you need to be licensed that you cannot do. Like I'm thinking of one of those people in warehouses that what is that thing that moves things around?
Conveyor belt.
Pardon me?
A conveyor belt?
No, not a conveyor belt. It's like a little truck with forks on the bottom. Yeah, I forget what that's called. I mean, but you need to have a license to operate that. You need a license to operate a crane.
Right, of course.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize that these invisible jobs that they take for granted actually require skill.
Well, I think the one thing I would just say in response to that is, in my view, every job requires skill. And I could go down a rabbit hole, which I will spare anybody watching on YouTube later on. I'll spare them my rabbit hole. But I think that we make a real mistake if we think that there is some skilled labor and some unskilled labor. Like I dispute that with every fiber of my being. And the whole notion of credentials, some credentials are so arbitrary. And so I think what we really have to do is revere all forms of labor. We have to revere all forms of labor, and we have to honor everyone who undertakes that labor. And in my view, it all takes skill. And there are certain things that are denigrated or marginalized that, trust me, again, I'm the granddaughter of a tool and die maker. I could never have done what he did. It took a lot of skill. My grandmother, she ran a cashier in a high school cafeteria. And she also was the first person to organize a union of cafeteria workers. And she was somebody that the kids loved because she was so kind to them as they went through the line. I mean, these are skills that are, I suppose some would erroneously call them soft skills. But I don't know. For me, every form of labor is skilled labor, and every job should be honored. So
I agree with you 100%. I work in the hospital, and one of the first things I learned was the most important people in the hospital are not the doctors and the nurses.
That's exactly right.
It is the environmental cleaners, because if they don't go in and clean a room after a patient left, then there's a backup in the ED, or where people can't go in that room.
Sure.
Nobody wants to go into a bathroom that's not clean.
Sure.
So it didn't take long to figure out that the EMS workers are probably the most important person and the most invisible in any medical center.
For sure. There's so much unsung labor within the healthcare industry. I work in philanthropy, and my field is healthcare. And I just think about, community health workers who are so, underpaid, and yet they're the people who build trust with the patients who, maybe don't trust the medical establishment to take care of their needs. Maybe there's language barriers, maybe there's cultural barriers. So there's so much unsung labor out there. And so again, and listen, I mean, the book also has, I can't remember if this poem ended up in the book or not, but there is a poem called The Physician, and there is a poem called The Minister. So it's not all the sort of hidden labor, but I just, again, I didn't want to reinforce or valorize distinctions between different kinds of labor by saying, like, this is just going to be about unsung labor. I mean, really,
I
get
it.
Yeah.
Your book sounds very exciting. It really does.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So a lot of aspiring writers listen to this show. They may come back and listen to it later. So I always ask writers who are published, whether they have a book or whether they have a multitude of things published in literary magazines, which is a very important step. What advice do you give to aspiring writers?
I mean, first and foremost, trust your own voice. Trust what you have to say, what you're putting down. It's so easy to feel like, oh, my voice doesn't matter. Who am I? What are my stories don't amount to anything. And just that is something that has to be fought, resisted, and disabused, because that's the main thing. Like, just write and trust where you're going with the writing. The other thing I would say is, attend as many readings as you can, whether they're virtual or in person. Listen and learn and see what you like, and go and spend time at your local bookstore, regardless of what your favorite genre is. Ask somebody at the store, like, hey, I really like to read X, or I'm trying to write Y. Can you point me to that section of the store? And invariably, especially at independent bookstores, there's going to be somebody on that staff who has expertise in that area, and they're going to come over and help you find what you're looking for. So I think it's so much to me about confidence, first of all, and then community building, because doing this work can be very, very lonely. I mean, you're pushing a very heavy boulder up a very steep hill often, and community is the place where you can find your people and get the, sort of like get the energy that you need just from being around them, and you can test ideas together. So just finding those trusted. Was that your cat?
Oh my goodness. I have
two
cats. Like that. They're both tuxedos, and they act like they're getting a divorce every single day.
I was like, the cat said I went too far. Went too far. Get it.
No,
stop talking.
They have lived together for a while, but it's a male and a female, and they go by. And I'm so sorry. I was.
That's totally fine. Listen. We're all living our lives, right? I think that's great. I'm surprised my dog is asleep, paying no attention to me right now, but she could have done the same. So
well, they're usually very well behaved when I'm on my computer.
They're like, don't tell us what to do. Don't tell us how to write. Anyway, yeah, confidence, community building, and just keep on keeping on. Don't give up. Just do it. Just do what you love. Find a place to let that passion have its breathing room that it needs. So that's my guidance.
Very, very wonderful advice. So anyone out there who's feeling discouraged, build community, trust your voice, build your confidence, and I would add read. Go to those bookstores as suggested and pick up books and read.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put your cover back up because anybody who pre-orders a copy of Catalog of Labors off of Unsolicited Press's website will get 20% off with the I think it's Literary Nights as a code to take that 20% off. So we hope you'll run right over to Unsolicited Press and buy the book or pre-order the book. Christy, I so much enjoyed listening to your work and talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope that people who listen to this end up enjoying it as much as I did. We'll find out. I hope people will place their comments in the comment section. And I'm looking forward to your book coming out because I'm very interested in labor. I'm a daughter of a bricklayer, and my mother worked in the state's attorney's office and as a secretary.
I love it. I love it.
So also, and all of my stories tend to have working class people in them because that's my background. I don't really know how people behave in non-working class families because I just don't have that experience. So all of my characters have jobs and work.
I love it. I love it. Well, Rosalia, this was such a pleasure, and in the spirit of relationship building, it was really lovely to get to know you. I'm so grateful for this conversation. So thank you.
Great. And I hope we can get together at AWP in Chicago next year. I intend to be there. Yes. Great. And I have to talk to Summer about maybe having another literary nights live. I'll have to try to find a space to do that in. So I might tap you for that. But anyway, thank you so much for sharing your work with us. And thank you to the people who are watching us this evening. We hope you will join us again. Our next reading is actually going to be September 2nd, 8:30 Eastern Time, 5:30 Pacific Time, and 7:30 Central Time. So thank you very much for joining us this evening, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, Rosalia. Bye-bye.